Hey, good morning. It's the next day from when I started this front spoiler, lance, belly pan, whatever we're calling it, project. And one of the next things I came up with as an issue was to get this, just a piece of aluminum, but I think I can show you. So to get this to lay level with the top of this spoiler, we've got these two protrusions, and as you can see, there we go, they kind of would hold the spoiler away from the pan we made. So we need to make an indentation, and this was my practice run, and you can see once that's made, then everything lays nice and flush. So I made a couple tries last night after I made the dies, and so what I made is I took a piece of 1/8 inch or real close to 1/8 inch steel, and then I welded some 1/4 inch steel. I used a piece of rectangular tubing first, and that gave me a nice clean edge on the inside, and then I just surrounded it with 1/4 inch, so you can kind of see that. And then I made a die that goes inside it, and I didn't get the hole dead in the center, but I drilled all the way through, so you can see. And then you need to leave enough room around the outer edge, and I keep messing this up. So we need to leave enough room around the outer edge of this so that there's a place for the aluminum to actually stretch into. And I just use a pin to line everything up. And you kind of have, it's rough because the aluminum is going to be between these two pieces. Alright, so let's try this again. So you take your piece, you'd lay that on the press, lay your workpiece on there, try and get the hole pretty close to lined up. Then you lay your forming die on there and line that up, and then this will just fall through, but you line it all up, put the press down on it, and then the pin can fall out as it presses. And it ends up making, when you're all done, you end up getting something that looks like that. Well, it worked really well. The shape's a little irregular, but it's going to be completely hidden when we're done, and this is popping up into an area where it's never going to be seen. So it's definitely clean enough for our project, for the process here, and it gives a place for this recessed area or this raised area to then go up in and give us a nice flush finish. The only other choice would really be to just cut that area out, try and weld it in. It'd be a mess. So now we need this because this is all, this is a straight line here, but it changes direction. And these aren't 90 degrees to this line. They are kind of basically straight with however it would have mounted to the car. So we've got to kind of duplicate that so that we have enough room. Now I made this a little bit bigger than the area, and it's just enough bigger that it gives a little bit of slop in there. So let's turn you around to the press and see if we can't get this done. Alright, so what I've got here, it's a couple of plates, and we really want this to be, we're raising the, how am I going to say this? Okay, we really want this plate laying flat on this, but we need a hole there. So I tried doing it over this square hole last night, and it worked, but it kind of takes away from some of the strength because the backing on this is only 1/8 inch. So I'm going to try offsetting these just a little bit to try and give a little more coverage. Something like that. Get that pretty well lined up. Alright, as you can see, I hope, I've got a bunch of reference lines on here. And this is the top of the panel, and we want the indentations going up, so we have to flip it over to get rafter. But we want this indentation. So let's see, we're going to mark this a little bit just for reference so that we get it in the same place every time. This is towards the front, and it's the front this way. I hope you can see that. So when we put this on, we're going to want it basically like that, and we want to try and line up that edge. It looks like it's going to line up pretty well on this one, on that line right there. And I just put a lot of reference lines in here so that no matter where, if this ended up over here, I could kind of, okay, that's close enough, I can line it up. If these things are at an angle, we'd want to come off these angled lines that represent the spoiler. But it looks like it's going to line up really well right there. So, unfortunately, we have to do all this upside down. We're going to get it pretty close to center. And we're going to have to actually turn it 90 degrees to give us room to actually get in there. And we're going to work on the passenger side first, which means we're going all the way through. So over there somewhere. And basically, we got to just kind of look under there and eyeball it into place.
Very close. Hold it in place. If I was a little more mobile, it should be a lot easier. I think we're very close.
Now then, this part that presses, I rounded off the edges a little bit. That's going to go like that. Pin out so that it doesn't get bound up in there. And that's pretty close. This close in there. Just a little weight over here. Line up this pin lined up. Okay, so now we have it lined up the correct direction. Alright, everything's lined up. The other thing I found was, because I only used 1/4 inch material for this top forming die, it wants to bow just a little bit. So if I just lay that piece of 3/8 on top of it, we get a nice clean form, and it doesn't bend the 1/4 inch. So that's it for that. Take this out. So we get a nice clean shape there. Doesn't form, there's no extra So in this one you can see, maybe you can see that, there's where this die went in backwards, it tried to, or 90 degrees off, it tried to overstretch this, whereas this one stretched just perfect. I mean, it's, if I'd have done this right, there'd have been two really nice ones here. So we'll hammer and dolly this a little bit, straighten that out, and maybe a little filing on it to get it all nice and cleaned up, but it's gonna work out just fine when it's all done. So you see where all that is now. If we lay this in there, all the holes line up, and now it sits nice and flush all the way across the panel. So we're going to get a nice finish to the panel. So last thing we got to do here is I'll clean all the markings off, test fit it in there one more time, and then on this other side, because there's a bracket I want to weld to. So on the top here, there's a bracket inside that catches the, it would have previously bolted to the bottom of the radiator support, and it houses the hood latch and some of the other apparatus in there. But we have this one part of the bracket that doesn't attach to anything, and so my intent is to put a bracket off of here that bolts to that, and then that will structurally tie this and that thing together. Everything gets more rigid in the process. So we do have one other thing to do, and that's from these two slots we've made. We need to fold this center section up about a 1/8 of an inch higher, so that it'll slip inside the bumper, and then these pieces, the outer edges, will bolt to the bottom of the bumper, and that gives us all of our rigidity. So let's go over and see if we can't put this on the bender, on the brake, and get that folded. Okay, so a couple hours have gone by since we started, and I took this wasn't going to fit in my brake with this piece on. There goes part of the door. So with that on there, this was not going to fit in this brake. So I ran around town looking for somebody who could put these bends in it. Basically, I just needed like a 72-inch finger brake. And I probably went to 4 or 5 different places that one place would send me over there. Oh yeah, they've got stuff like that. And I'd go over there. Nobody has that big a finger brake. And a lot of people have some big giant press brakes around here, but nobody has short dies for them where we could get in here and bend this little section or even the section here. So it came down to, I could build some forming dies and I could run them through the press, and I could press, you know, maybe a foot at a time, and put my Z-bend in it here, and I could make another die, and I could put a press there and press the bend I need in it. And I would spend all day probably trying to get those dies done and bent. Or I could go over there to my bandsaw. That took about 30 seconds to cut that off. I can set it aside because now the whole piece fits in my brake. I can bend with my brake, and when I'm all done, I come back over here, bevel that edge a little bit on both pieces, and I can TIG weld it back together. And I will probably be all done in about half an hour. So basically I've wasted over 2 hours today and probably drove 40 miles, you know, all around all the different places. So anyway, we're gonna get started here. So the first bend we need to make is on this side. So we'll slide all our dies this direction, and this will be the time consuming part, is we're gonna have to move all the dies down here, get everything lined up to fit in this section. And then when we flip it over, we'll probably have to slide them back this direction. But be that as it may, we can get this done here in this shop. So let's get started.
size around so that you don't have all the big ones on one end and all the small ones on the other. I'll come back in and smell them already.
Alright, we got all the teeth separated to where we're in our area, and we're going to put a Z-bend in this, so we need to get pretty good bend going. See if I can get some more leverage. See that? Really, we'd like that to be a few more degrees. So I think we're going to have to put it back in and try and do just a little more. And again, a whole lot of this would be easier if my mobility was better. We got what we need now. So now, I'm going to go back in this direction and bend it the other way. I don't think we can get it from, well, maybe we can. I can get it from here. You don't have to move all the teeth. Notice, but anyway, we got this all laid out, got the bend in it. I did have to do quite a bit of hammer and dolly on here because everything was just so tightly bunched together. And you know, I ended up welding that, actually it was this end down here, back on and grinding that out smooth and then just sanding it as much as I could. I still have the backside to do. And of course, once I got the second coat of paint on, the wind came up and blew crud all over it. So tomorrow I'll end up sanding it out once it's good and hard and respraying it again. But you know, it's 85% done, 90% done. Everything lines up, slides right in where it needs to go. The spoiler fits really well, and then I can add the brackets that support the spoiler. And I finally found a place for the oil cooler for this car, and so I can't use the oil cooler that the owner had sent with the car, so I ended up buying a new one today that's longer and narrower, get about the same surface area, but and gets me the ports down here on one end, so it'll actually mount off of this. So once I get it all painted and touched up, and I'll go ahead and get the oil cooler mounted to it, and then I'll put it all in at one time. And well, a couple of days have gone by, and I sanded this panel back down and got it resprayed. And now I'm just putting some nut zerts in there to mount the spoiler to. And we'll got to open up one of these. One hole we're going to use, we'll go ahead and open it up, but we're going to use, we'll go ahead and put a nut zert in one. And the other one, the L bracket that is going to help stiffen everything up, is going to be mounted to that. So can't really, can't put a nut zert in there. We'll probably put the nut zert in the L bracket. That way we can bolt all the way through to everything, through the spoiler, through this, and into that bracket. So we'll go ahead and get this one drilled out. And these are for 5/16, and that's just the the stock size hardware.
Just a little more. We need different.
You guys have seen seen this before. So I have two different installers, and just depending on the size of the nutzert, I switch back and forth.
Screw for that.
Alright. And these, where I made these indentations for the spoiler, they're a little deeper than they need to be, so I need to put one shim behind each of these. So just a body shim.
I'm gonna take that one out until I drill out the hole. Let's do that real quick. Alright, that's mounted.
And on the 69 Camaro, they used some brackets like this. Something like that. So for us, I don't, these are going to work just fine. Probably stock length. I can bolt that in there. Change the angle on that slightly, and it'll all bolt in. Same on this side. And what I'll do is where it catches down here at the bottom, may have to shorten this one slightly. Where this edge hits the bumper bracket, then I will line that up and then drill the hole. And like I said, this one I may have to go ahead and shorten a little bit and get it over here. I don't know what the difference is, but these two panels are different sizes, and of course we made a pattern off of the car, so we're not going to change anything there. But they both, looks like they both may need an inch or so taken out. This one's going to be the same way. This mounts to the bottom of the radiator, so I will pull this, cut this off, and bring this eyelet all the way up here and mount that there. So we'll go ahead and get this one done for sure. I'll probably reverse this so that the slotted version will be down here and the single hole will be at the top. So let me go put a bend in this, and then we'll cut it off. But you can get a pretty good idea of what this is going to look like now. You get the spoiler into there, and it'll all be underneath the car really nice and clean. And it's pretty stiff. I don't know how much it would need, but at 70 miles an hour it might break that, I guess that's ABS. The original ones I think were the Endura product. These are obviously substantially less expensive for when you run it into a curb. So, so let's go ahead and get this bent. We're making a big impression.
Alright, so what I ended up doing was cutting these bars down 1 inch, and then the center bar I cut it down quite a bit and rebent rebent the ends. So the center bar I cut down, I don't know, probably 6 inches, and then I rebent the ends so that they would line up with this. So just waiting on the paint to dry on that one. We'll get these two installed.
So you can see how it melts here now. Everything.
Supported so this won't be flopping in the wind. This bolt hole will be for the L bracket that catches everything from the underside, or the top side I guess. And then this slot and these holes on each end catch the bumper bolts. This catches the radiator, little number 10 bolt in the back of the radiator. And then these will drill after everything else is installed and we've got it squared away. We can drill into this straight into the bumper bracket and then put a bolt and nut on that. And while I was messing with all the rest of this, I got the front camera installed. That's what that cable goes to. And then the final thing will be, before we can actually install this, will be that the oil cooler will be somewhere right in this area above it, behind the bumper. And I need access to that, so there's no sense in installing this and then just having to take it back out. And I've got to run a bunch of lines to the oil cooler, also to the supercharger coolant recovery tank. So all of that goes there. And then I think on this side we also have the radiator overflow tank, and we'll have one line that comes off of it. So I've got to get all those things installed, then I can slide this up in there and hide everything away. So for now this is done. Mark it off the list, set it aside, and we can move on to the next project on the Chevelle. Thanks for following along. Hope you learned something, and we'll see you next week for whatever the next project is on the Chevelle. Got to get this thing done and get it out of here. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching Allison Customs Project Car TV. Like us on Facebook and check us out at AllisonCustomsOnline.com.